Good evening, and welcome to Blackwood Manor. Tonight, the mountain is wrapped in rain, and the old house sits quiet in the middle of it, the way it has through every storm for longer than anyone can remember. The lake below is black and still. The forest keeps its silence, and far up in the house, behind one tall window, a single candle still burns, the last soul awake before the whole manor gives itself over to sleep. There is nowhere you must be tonight, nothing left that needs doing. Whatever the day asked of you, it has finished asking. So let your shoulders come down, let your breath go slow, and come inside, out of the weather, while I tell you of a night much like this one, when a knock came at the door of Blackwood Manor, long after the world had gone to bed. It was well past midnight when the bell rang. Old Mortimer heard it from the drawing-room, where he had stayed late, banking the last of the fire. One low chime carried down the long, dark hall. He lifted his head. He listened, and when it came again, softer, almost apologetic, he set down the iron poker and rose slowly to his feet. In all his long years at Blackwood, Mortimer had learned the manor's every mood. He knew which stairs would creak and which would keep his secret. He knew the sigh of the shutters and the low, steady tick of the hall clock, and he knew, too, that a bell at this hour meant the mountain had sent someone out of the dark and the rain, and that the house, as always, would decide what to do with them. He took up his candle and went to see. He crossed the great hall without hurry, the little flame swaying in his hand, the shadows leaning back to let him pass. Blackwood Manor is a different place at night, larger somehow, and older, and full of a quiet that seems almost to be listening. Mortimer had long since stopped minding it. He reached the tall front door, he drew back the heavy iron bolt, and he opened the house to the storm and to whatever the night had carried up the mountain and left waiting on the step. A young woman stood upon the step. She was soaked through to the bone, her coat dark with rain, her hair clinging to her cheek, and she held a small case in both hands as though it were the last thing in the world that was hers. When the candlelight found her face, she tried to smile. "I'm so sorry," she said. "My car has stopped, down on the mountain road. I've been walking a long while. I saw your light." "Then you have walked far enough," said Mortimer gently. "Come in, child, before the night takes you altogether." And he stepped aside, and the traveller came in out of the rain, and Blackwood Manor closed its door softly behind her. Inside, the great hall was warm and dim and still. The lamps were low, the dark wood glowed, and high above, in the shadowed beams, the rain whispered against the roof, near but held safely out. The traveller stood dripping on the flagstones, looking up at the wide staircase curving into the dark, at the old portraits keeping their long and patient watch, and she let out a slow breath, the breath a person lets go when they have come at last somewhere kind. "You are chilled through," Mortimer said. "There is a fire and a warm room and time enough for everything else in the morning. come. As they crossed the hall, a shape came down out of the shadows at the foot of the stairs. Soft, unhurried, tail held high. The cat of Blackwood Manor. It had lived in the house longer than anyone could rightly say, and it went where it pleased, and tonight it pleased the cat to walk beside the weary stranger. It looked up at her once with calm and knowing eyes, as if to tell her that all was well, that she was expected, that the house was glad of her. And the traveller, tired as she was, felt something in her ease at the sight of it. Mortimer led her into the drawing-room, where the fire had burned low. He knelt and set a fresh log upon the coals and stirred them, and in a moment the flames rose again, gold and gentle, throwing their soft moving light across the old room. There were deep chairs here, worn soft by years, a thick rug, heavy curtains drawn against the dark. The rain murmured at the tall windows, the fire murmured in the hearth. "Sit," said Mortimer, "and be warm. I will wake the mistress of the house. She would never forgive me if a guest passed the night at Blackwood and she was not told." And the cat climbed up beside the fire and curled itself small and began, low and steady, to purr. The traveller sank into the nearest chair, and it held her the way old chairs do, without complaint, as though it had waited all evening for someone tired to come. She held her hands out to the flames. The warmth crept slowly back into her fingers, and through the tall, dark window beside her, she watched the rain run down the glass, silver threads on the black, while inside, by the fire, all was gold and warm and safe. There was nowhere to be, nothing to do, only the rain on the window, and the fire in the grate, and the soft old house breathing around her. The cat slept on the arm of the chair beside her, tucked into a small dark circle, its sides rising and falling, its low purr filling the quiet like a sound the house itself was making. Outside, the storm went on over the mountain, but it could not come in, not here. Here there was only the warmth and the low light and the sound of a small creature at perfect peace. A little while later, Vivian Blackwood came into the room, wrapped in a shawl the colour of deep wine, a candle in her hand. She was old and silver-haired and unhurried, and very little in this world surprised her any more, least of all a stranger by her fire on a stormy night. Blackwood Manor had always taken in those the mountain turned away. It was, she had always felt, among the truest things a great old house was for. "So," she said, and her voice was warm and dry as the crackle of the fire, "the mountain has sent us a guest." The traveller began to rise, to apologize, but Vivian waved her gently back into the chair. "No, no, sit. You have had trouble enough tonight without standing on my account." She lowered herself into the chair opposite and arranged her shawl, and the firelight caught the silver of her hair. "You will stay the night, of course. The road down the mountain is no place for anyone in the dark and the wet. In the morning, when it is light, Mortimer will see to your car and to you, and every trouble that feels so heavy tonight will feel a good deal lighter by breakfast. That is the great kindness of the morning. It makes small and ordinary things of our nighttime fears. And the traveller, too tired to argue and too grateful to try, simply said, "Thank you." "Think nothing of it," said Vivian. "This house is very good at rest. It has had a great deal of practice." Mortimer brought a tray. Upon it a pot of something warm, herbs and honey and quiet, gentle things, and 2 cups and a small plate of plain biscuits. He set it down and poured, and the steam rose up in soft curls into the firelight. The traveller wrapped her cold hands around the warm cup. She breathed in the sweetness of it, and she drank, slowly, and felt the warmth go down through her, out along her tired arms, all the way to her fingertips, until the last of the cold had left her at last. For a long while no one spoke. There was no need. The rain spoke for them, soft against the glass. The fire spoke, low in the grate, and far off through the open door the old clock in the hall spoke its slow and even tick, the sound of Blackwood Manor keeping time, as it had kept time through 100 years of storms, and would keep it through 100 more. The traveller's eyes grew heavy. She did not fight them. There was nothing here to fear, and nothing here to fight. Only warmth, only rest, only the old house holding her gently in the dark. When at last she could barely keep her eyes open, Vivian rose, and Mortimer took up his candle once more, and they led the traveller from the room. Down the long panelled corridor they went, slow and quiet, the little flame lighting the way. The portraits watched from the walls, calm faces, kind faces, keeping their long night's watch over the sleeping house. And the traveller's hand rested on the smooth old wood, worn to silk by 100 years of hands, as she followed the candle deeper into the warm and waiting dark. The cat came too, of course. It padded ahead of them up the wide staircase, pausing at the turn to look back, its eyes bright in the candlelight, as though to be certain no one had been left behind. Up and up they climbed, one soft step at a time, the house growing quieter around them, the storm growing further away, until they came to a long, still hall, and a door standing open, with warm light within. The room beyond was small and lovely and warm. A bed made up with soft pale linen and a deep quilt. A tall window curtained against the rain. A single candle burning low, and a little fire glowing gentle in the grate. Someone had seen to it all. The house, it seemed, had thought of everything. "Here," said Vivian from the door, "you will be comfortable here. The bed is soft, and the room is warm, and the rain will sing you to sleep. It always does in this room. It faces the mountain. You will hear the whole storm, and be safe and dry inside it, which is the very finest way there is to hear a storm." The room beyond was small and lovely and warm. The traveller stood a moment in the middle of the little room, and felt, for the first time in a long, long while, entirely safe. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "We have thanked us enough by resting. That is all any of us wishes for you tonight. And she smiled and drew the door softly closed, and her steps and Mortimer's candle went away down the hall until Blackwood Manor was quiet once more. And the traveller changed into the warm, dry things left folded for her, and turned back the deep quilt and climbed into the soft old bed at last. The pillow was soft, the fire whispered, the rain sang against the glass, just as Vivian had promised, and she felt herself grow heavy and heavier still, sinking down and down into the warmth. Somewhere below, the old clock ticked on. Somewhere in the walls, the timbers creaked and settled, easing down for the night. And just outside her door, curled on the warm boards where the last of the firelight reached, the cat of Blackwood Manor kept its quiet watch, drowsy and content and purring low. The traveller's eyes closed. The rain sang on, and the old house held her gently through the storm, as it has held every weary soul that ever came to its door out of the dark, asking only for a little warmth and a little rest.
There is nothing more to do tonight. The traveller is safe. The house is warm. The doors are bolted against the storm, the fires are banked low, and every room breathes slow and even in the dark. The rain will fall until morning, and in the morning, as Vivian said, the impossible things will seem quite ordinary again. But that is the morning's business, and not yours, not tonight. Tonight there is only the rain and the warmth and the deep, soft dark. So let the old house hold you the way it holds the traveller. Let the rain sing you down. You are safe, you are warm, there is nowhere to be and nothing to do, and no trouble that cannot keep until the light.
Sleep now. Blackwood Manor will keep you. And if in your waking hours you find yourself wondering who the traveller was, and what became of her when morning came to that strange and lovely house, there is a whole story waiting for you. One night at Blackwood Manor. You'll find it just below. But that is a tale for the daylight. For now there is only the rain, and the warm dark and rest. Good night, sleep well, and welcome always to Blackwood Manor.